Welcome to Only Joe, where chip lasers, fight drama, and civic insanity all somehow coexist. Today we've got a machine firing lasers at metal droplets hotter than the surface of sanity, an MMA argument that actually matters, and a reminder that a shocking amount of American life used to be run by either poison, corruption, or both. Chip making still sounds fake when you say it out loud. You've got a machine zapping a tin droplet moving around 250 kilometers an hour, hitting it 3 times in 20 microseconds, and heating it past 220,000 Kelvin. That's around 40 times hotter than the sun's surface, which feels like an overreaction, but apparently that's how you make the future. It does this about 50,000 times a second with basically no missed shots, and the mirrors are polished so absurdly smooth that if you scaled one to the size of Earth, the biggest bump would be the size of a playing card. And all that precision is so wafers can be lined up within about 5 atoms. 5. At that point you're not building products, you're arguing with reality. Then the chips get tested, and this part is sneaky and brilliant. The best dies become premium parts, the weaker ones get sold as lower tiers, so one production run turns into a whole menu of products. Which is why yield matters so much. If too many chips come out mediocre, your high-end lineup gets kneecapped. Samsung just got a taste of that with a factory issue tied to a spike in low-quality chips. One bad stretch and suddenly your flagship dreams are getting sold as the bargain option. The MMA point I actually buy is the restart complaint. If a guy earns a takedown and controls position, the ref standing them up resets the whole equation and hands a gift to the striker. If the ground position was earned, the restart should reflect that position, not erase it because the clock did a thing. And this is where Khabib always comes up because he had that leg under position that basically shut down your hips and your hope at the same time. People talk about his pressure like it was just strength. It wasn't. It was geometry, control, and the slow realization that you were trapped under a guy who was also willing to do this with a broken nose. That's demoralizing in a way that should probably count double on the scorecards. Then on the total other end of fight discourse, Sean Strickland wins a title, shows a white pride tattoo, and suddenly he's out of a White House-hosted UFC event despite being the only American champion. Of course, that blew up. It turned into the usual fight world argument about free expression, symbolism, and whether public institutions are endorsing a person or just honoring a champion. Whatever side you're on, it was never going to pass quietly once the words white pride entered the room. Meanwhile, the incentive structure for media is still completely cooked. Comedians and entertainers have figured out that outrage prints money. The more provocative the clip, the more clicks, the more engagement, the more the algorithm pets you like, a good little chaos goblin. The obvious problem is that the machine then demands escalation. If mild offense worked yesterday, today you've got to go bigger, meaner, weirder. It burns out performers and polarizes audiences because everyone gets trained to react at maximum volume. Traditional news hasn't exactly covered itself in glory either. The complaint is that consensus outlets push one partisan frame, counter-programming outlets push another, and viewers end up trusting neither. So people drift to X, where sensational junk, low-credibility clips, and outright horseshit can rocket around faster than anything carefully reported. That's not a small side effect. It trains the whole culture to reward whatever is most inflammatory, whether it's news, comedy, or some guy shouting in a truck. That distrust also feeds every conversation about covert influence. USAID catches criticism for money getting lost to fraud, overhead, and projects that don't really reach the people they're supposed to help, plus the more cynical charge that aid can double as a geopolitical tool to fund preferred groups or media behind the curtain. And once people believe institutions do manipulate culture, old theories never really die. The wild one here is the claim that US intelligence pushed gang rap in the 80s to boost crime, prison populations, and private prison profits. Mainstream acceptance of that theory is basically non-existent, but it survives because people see the timing, the controversy, the incentives, and go, yeah, that feels dark enough to be plausible. That's kind of the whole era now. Even flimsy claims get longevity when public trust is already on life support. A lot of old medicine stories are really just a reminder that history was insane. Early NyQuil was around 25% alcohol and also packed pseudoephedrine, decongestants, antihistamines, acetaminophen, and cough suppressant. So yes, one dose could leave you partially intoxicated while technically pursuing wellness. The mid-2000s reformulation stripped out pseudoephedrine and cut down the alcohol, mostly because regulators were tired of meth precursors showing up in cold medicine, which is a sentence that tells you everything about America. Pediatric dentistry wasn't much more comforting. Mid-century kids could get lead-based fillings, meaning toxic metal in the mouth, plus infections that could go septic before modern antibiotics cleaned up the game. Modern dentistry getting rid of lead feels like progress we should have arrived at without the rehearsal period, but here we are. Then you've got the very American combo meal of housing panic and municipal corruption. In Newark, blockbusting meant real estate agents stoking racial fear to push white homeowners into selling, which rapidly changed neighborhoods and made a fortune off panic. Some residents resisted, and over time many neighborhoods became diverse immigrant communities, but the initial mechanism was ugly and deliberate. Youngstown sounds even more unreal. A 2000 report alleged the mob effectively controlled huge chunks of local government, from the police chief and prosecutor to judges, the sheriff, and county engineer. Once civic institutions become extensions of organized crime, you get the whole package: no-show jobs, kickbacks, patronage, bombings, violence, and public office treated like a racketeering side hustle. People say government should run like a business. Careful what business you mean. Few quick ones before we get out of here. Kanye's stadium shows are being talked about like modern rock spectacles for a reason. Rotating globe stage, inflatable structures, private lifts, non-stop performance, no intermission, minimal promotion, massive sellouts. That's not casual success. That's industrial scale main character energy. On the finance side, celebrity wealth keeps proving that being rich and being liquid are not the same thing. Floyd Mayweather parked huge money in watches worth $1 or $2 million each, and Ferraris pushing 7 figures, which looks amazing, until you remember that your net worth is now wearing jewelry and depreciating in the driveway. Nicolas Cage is the more dramatic cautionary tale. He went from around $150 million to deep debt, then clawed back stability by working constantly, taking direct-to-video roles and unloading major assets. Not glamorous, but effective. And in music lore, the line between inspiration and getting absolutely cleaned out is razor thin. The Verve lost all royalties on Bittersweet Symphony over a sample tied to the Rolling Stones, and Radiohead's Creep had to credit the Hollies because those opening chords were just a little too friendly with the air that I breathe. Make a classic song, and sometimes the prize is a lawsuit. That's it for this round of Only Joe. If today's episode taught us anything, it's that the world runs on microscopic precision, giant egos, and systems that probably need adult supervision. Catch you next time. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.